sure. Now, MVP this year, another story. Couple guys being mentioned. You've tossed around the award discussions on your Sirius show. Jokic seems to be the consensus now. Others are holding out on Embiid despite the missed games. You're seeing other people included in this discussion. And I don't go as crazy about this as some other people do. Like, I've heard people on podcasts saying, like, we need a real assessment of what this award means. We can't figure it out. Like, you just kind of go with your guy and then, let the results show. And they usually get it right. There's a few years looking back that maybe they got bored with Jordan or got bored with some other people who were winning it a ton, Kareem way back. But year in and year out, it feels like they get it close. You could say, oh, LeBron should win it every year, which some people do because of his stature in this league. But this is the most interesting race we've ever had, at least in our memories probably. You could throw Kawhi into that race. You could make the case for Steph Curry with the last month that he's just had. And the schedule, the injuries, and the COVID over the league have made it that much harder for voters this year to consider, in Embiid's case. And he's actually my guy because I discount the, probably 10, 12 games that he's missed there. I'm just going off what he's shown on the court, what he's meant to Philly, and how he's powered that team to the top of the East. That's kind of my depiction of it. And maybe that is the problem with this, is that you have a lot of different people looking at it with different ideas of what MVP is. But it's made it really contentious this year. I don't know if you heard Brian Windhorst and those ESPN guys screaming at each other on the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. It's getting hot out there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to MVP is it changes, the criteria changes year to year based on the circumstance of the season. And so if we were going by straight value, then yes, LeBron James is going to win every year because his value to his team, as we've seen over the course of time, is always going to be the greatest in the NBA. I mean, look, so he goes to Cleveland first overall in 2003 to make the playoffs within 2 years, and they were in the playoffs every year after that. He leaves as the worst team in the NBA. He goes to Miami, a team that was struggling to get over the hump. They win a title within 2 years. They go back to back. He goes back to Cleveland after they did not make the playoffs once. You realize the last time that the Cavaliers made the playoffs without LeBron James, Mike Fratello was their coach in the 90s. That's how long it's been. And so for his value is greater than anybody in the NBA. So yes, he would win it every year if it was just based on value. But that's not what it's based on. It's all based on best season overall, what you meant to your team during this season over the course of 82, or in this case, 72 games. And this year in particular, you said it, durability is going to be a major factor. And that's why Nikola Jokic is number one on pretty much every list right now. He's played in every single game. Yeah. He has not missed a single for the Denver Nuggets. And by the way, if they can maintain that 4 spot in the West now without Jamal Murray the rest of the season, it's only going to help his case because he's going to have to put the team on his back even more right now after having several 40-point games, after having absurd triple-doubles all year, and the fact that he's been there every game. You said Embiid's missed, 12 to 13? He's missed 18 games this year. And there's only one MVP, I believe, that's played less than, I think it's 78% of a team's games. That's Bill Walton, who played, I think, 72 to 73%. I don't know. Those aren't exact stats, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. The other thing I'll tell you, the argument for the Currys and the Dame Lillards of the world. There's only one MVP in recent memory over the course of several decades now that has not been in, I think, a top 2 or 3 seed in their conference to win it, and that's Russell Westbrook when Oklahoma City was 5 or 6, and he averaged a triple-double for the first time since Oscar Robertson. So when you look at it, it took history for him to do that. There's nothing that's historical enough this season for anybody to overcome the lack of success at the top of their conference, to overcome not getting to a certain amount of games. So to me, if Jokic keeps on the pace that he's at, if he doesn't miss a single game, or maybe he misses 1 or 2, whatever, it's all going to play into his factor and into his hand. So I think it's his to lose right now, but things change every single day in the NBA. Things change every single week. Like 3-4 weeks ago, I would have told you James Harden was right there in the running, and it looks like that's going to be out of the question as well. So it's just a year-to-year type of thing, and it feels like, I should say, Jokic's year.
Yeah, and therefore, he's probably got it. It feels like that's the consensus guy, and the narrative is built. And again, that Murray point is going to be so important going forward, and what he's going to mean to them post Murray as they continue to try to win games here. I do think it's interesting, and this is what's taken over the sport too in recent years to some degree, is it's hard to, and this is why that screaming match kind of went on that podcast on ESPN, is that the number 2 guy, there's a feeling that he's not going to get his due, whoever that runner-up is. Even 3rd, 4th, and 5th places who have had outstanding seasons in the end. This happens every year. There's ultra memorable seasons, whether it's Kobe with Nash or some of the other runner-ups there that have happened throughout the years, that it feels like are going to get forgotten just because there's an all or nothing approach. We don't remember the runner-ups in the NBA finals in this sport fondly. We don't even remember teams making it to the conference finals as a great thing. In Boston, the Celtics have made 3 or 4 and the fans have turned it into a failure. So like this narrative around the sport, and I don't, you're in the NFL world, baseball world, all these other sports as well. It feels like the NBA has this particular problem, and we'll talk about like the narrative of the sport and where it's going, that it's all or nothing. If you're Kevin Durant, you don't have a championship, you're a failure. If you're Kevin Durant, you're not the number 1 on your team, it doesn't count. Like there's just all this, narrative-based goalpost moving in the sport on what qualifies as a success in your career or in any given season.
Yeah, I think it's good and bad, though. I think that obviously the negatives, you pointed out a whole bunch of them. I think it can be taxing on players and their mental health. It can be taxing on a fan base and their mental health if their team continuously struggles to get over that plateau. But at the same time, it keeps the league constantly relevant because there are always these conversations. There are always these talking points. And this has been cultivated. This has been molded over the years from sports talk and from Twitter, social media, and the fact that people just like to debate. I think that's the biggest thing here. People like to debate. People like to disagree in general in life. Someone could say it's my favorite color on Twitter, and I think they'd get more hate than anybody known to man. They'd say, what about blue? What about purple? It's just how it works, right? And so the NBA falls into the same umbrella in the current scope of the world in general. People just like to go back and forth. It's part of the fun. And then at the end of the day, it's like, it's all in good fun. But it does keep the league constantly relevant. And it's made
Do you really need water?
Seriously.
That was one.
Yeah, does water actually make you wet? Like it's just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
But it has made the NBA 12-month-a-year league. And that is great. It's really good for the league. And so if it's going to create more intrigue and more interest from more sources, I'm all for it. I'm all down for whatever debate people want to have. I might not partake, but I'll sit on the sidelines and watch and listen.
All right, rapid fire. Your defensive player of the year.
Ben Simmons.
Most improved.
Julius Randle.
Those ones feel like givens for sure. Rookie of the year got interesting with LaMelo Ball going down. Where are you taking that one at this point?
Yeah, no, so I think it's going to take this last stretch of games here. It depends on if Sacramento can win enough and Halliburton continues to play well enough. I think he can
love his game.
He's great, and he's a great player, and I think he could take it. Anthony Edwards would be the other. He's averaging over 18 points per game, so he could absolutely, just based on his stats alone. And you're right, the LaMelo thing was a bummer because he was playing out of his mind. So it's one of those two.
Was the dunk of the year Anthony Edwards or was it Miles Bridges?
The Miles Bridges one was probably better, just based on how far back he put that thing. Yeah, the Edwards dunk. The Edwards dunk was an all-timer, but the Bridges one, someone said recently that it reminded them of when Vince Carter dunked over Alonzo Mourning, and that was one of my favorite dunks growing up. Being a Nets
Clint
guy.
Capella too. That makes a big difference.
Correct,
I think
correct.
you Adame in Toronto, but kind of a smaller wing. This was on a big center.
A shot blocker, a rim protector, one of the best shot blockers in the league. And so that to me was extra points.